Welcome to the Front Office Exchange, where we take a look at the careers of executives and rising stars within the sports business. Now here's your host, Jake Vailing.
This is episode 29 of the Front Office Exchange podcast, where today we meet JD Kershaw, Vice President of Marketing for the Columbus Blue Jackets, another hockey guy. Today's podcast combines a little of everything from our last few episodes. I mentioned hockey, but JD was a former player who learned quickly that he wanted to move to the business side of the sport. One of my favorite parts of our conversation was about this transition. Since he was still in shape and a strong player, he would work out with the San Jose Sharks. That's the club that offered him his first off-ice role. And he said that he was immediately pegged as, quote, a hockey guy. JD was more interested in the business side, however, than hockey ops. So he had to make a conscious effort not to pigeonhole himself early in his career. He walked through that. It was a really fascinating conversation. After a later stint with NHL Europe overseas, JD, via an assist from his wife, I told him he's got to recognize her for that, they relocated to the U.S. to help launch the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he hasn't looked back since. It was great to hear about Columbus, the city, and how it surprises and impresses the national media and visitors every chance it gets when it hosted the All-Star Game and the NHL Draft, for example. JD was a blast, and his insight into marketing a team without a consistent tradition of winning yet, and in a smaller, non-traditional hockey market was fascinating. So without further ado, JD Kershaw of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Hello, JD Kershaw. Welcome to the Front Office Exchange podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. Well, I was obviously excited to be referred to you by Doug Worf, mutual friend there. He's obviously had some career changes since we were initially introduced, but nonetheless, it's great to get some professional hockey executives that to come onto the show. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'd love to walk through your career eventually here at some point, but right now for the Columbus Blue Jackets, you are Vice President of Marketing. So let's start there. You've been in that role in particular for, it looks like, about 5 or 6 years. So let us know a little bit about your role and, if you can, what a typical day-to-day looks like, let's say on a game day.
Yeah, so, I think it's, I don't want to make it sound like, what I do is the same for every team. I think it's different depending on, kind of where you're at in your business cycle and such. But, in general, I work very closely with the ticketing folks and the marketing team, and oversee all the initiatives to essentially drive ticket sales. So under that, you'd have promotions and advertising and different ticket initiatives, and essentially right now, for us where we're at as an organization, although it's getting better with the team performance. It's primarily all about ticket sales. I do get involved more recently on building operations type stuff, but for the most part, the vast majority of my time is focused on ticket sales.
Okay. And you are a career hockey guy, right? We talked before we recorded. You played a little bit too. Is that right?
Yeah, so when I'm originally from Canada, but I went to both high school and college in the U.S. And then after my college days, I played a little bit of pro hockey, 3 years in Europe and a year here in the minors, and then I got right into the business with the San Jose Sharks in the mid '90s, and have been in the NHL in some capacity ever since.
So talk a little bit about the San Jose market. And obviously, the market in general, everybody knows, impossible to live there. Just the cost of living out there is crazy, but they love their Sharks. And you were there for about 3 years, and then you went to NHL Europe, back over there in Europe. So walk us through that transition a little bit.
Yeah, so I went to San Jose in '94, and that's the 93-94 season was their first season in San Jose. Prior to that, they had been playing in the Cal Palace in San Francisco. So that's when they built the arena in San Jose. I got there in March of '94. They had a relatively good year that year. It was amazing. They snuck into the playoffs in the 8th position in the West, and played Detroit in the first round and actually beat Detroit. And as I look back, that was a huge launching pad for the Sharks,
right,
in my opinion. I don't know if they would be the franchise they are today if they hadn't had some of that early success.
Wow.
It was just amazing to see what happened to that Bay Area, when they got in the playoffs and they knocked off the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, it was a huge deal. But I spent 4 years there, in marketing, but really focused on grassroots initiatives and growing the game. I knew I wanted to do more, and I wanted to stay on the business side, but I wanted to do more, and I had this unique opportunity to go back to Europe and work for the NHL. The NHL used to have an office in Zurich, Switzerland. It's no longer there. But I went there for 2 years, and it was great because not only did I get to do a lot of work in a lot of different countries with a lot of different people, but because the office was so small, it was only myself and another Canadian guy. It was so small that we got to dabble in a lot of different things. I mean, I got to do, marketing, fan development, advertising, and promotions. I got to do some licensing. I got to do some radio and television stuff. So it was just a great experience to touch a lot of different parts of the business and do it in a lot of different countries. Very challenging at some times, but just an amazing experience. And I got married during that time too, and we actually had our first child in Switzerland, and wanted to get back closer to family, and that kind of created the transition to back to Columbus. My wife actually worked for the Blue Jackets as well for the first 11 years, so it was nice. We got to kind of come in as a package deal and help start the Blue Jackets franchise.
Wow. So Switzerland, another place with just a really low cost of living, right?
Yeah, exactly. Went from the Bay Area to Switzerland.
You don't mess around.
It was quite a pleasant change when I moved to Columbus. I can tell you that.
I can't. Your paycheck like tripled. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. The cost of living is pretty crazy in those places.
Yeah. So I'm always curious, as someone who played a little bit, how was that transition for you initially? I guess it would be going back to the Sharks experience. Was there a period where you said, maybe this isn't for me, or did you always know, hey, I'm not going to play for long. I'm really more focused on getting into the business side of the sport?
Yeah, it was interesting. I could tell. So when I went to work for the Sharks, I had just finished playing. I was still in pretty good shape. A lot of the work that I was doing was youth hockey related, and I was spending a lot of time on the ice. There was a lockout, between the players and the owners shortly thereafter, and I was skating with the Sharks guys all the time, and I was getting this reputation as a hockey guy, and it was weird. I knew that I had to kind of break that. If I was gonna go anywhere in the business, I knew I kind of had to break that mold a little bit. As hey, he's just the hockey guy, and he runs hockey schools, and he does this and that and grassroots, and so I just that's why I made a conscious decision to hey, I got to go do something different. I got to get more experience. And there's been times throughout my career where I've had the chance to go onto the hockey side of the business, and whether it's in coaching or scouting or whatever, and
right.
Which a lot of guys, with my background do, and I just made the conscious decision early and have stuck with it that I want to be on the business side. I really enjoy it. And, the way I look at it too, ultimately, if I would ever be so fortunate to be the president of a team one day, well, then I get to dabble on both sides.
Sure. So it sounds like an incredible experience in NHL Europe. And then you said you come to the Columbus Blue Jackets as a package deal. Walk me through that recruitment process. Some companies, some teams are okay with that. Some aren't. And I'm just talking business in general. But what was that like for you coming back to the States and saying, did you say, hey, you need to hire both of us? Or what was that like?
Well, I met my wife in San Jose. She had worked for the Sharks too, so we had started dating there, and then we got married, and she came over to Switzerland. But it was actually interesting because we made the decision that we wanted, when our son was born, we wanted to get back closer to family. And my wife had a connection. My wife, prior to working in San Jose, had also worked in Tampa. and one of the executives in Tampa was years later was here starting the franchise in Columbus. So my wife had a connection with him, and it actually started through my wife. My wife started to have conversations with them about being their director of event presentation, running all the entertainment in the building. And I said, well, and she had an interview, and I said, well, if we're going to move to Columbus, I might as well come with you and check it out and see what it's all about. And so while she was here on her interview, the gentleman who was the head of the organization on the business side at that time, I met him, and he said he didn't know who I was, but when I told him, he was like, "Really?" I was like, "Well, why don't you come as well?" So it kind of happened by happenstance,
wow.
But and it actually was driven by my wife.
Well, you owe her as an assist, right? I mean, that's a point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice. So, all right, let's talk about Columbus just in general. I always hear these things. You hear about test markets and things like that. That Columbus is this perfect little, not too small, but not too big, but still has all the amenities. So you've been there for, gosh, I mean, you're going on 20 years. So can you brag on Columbus a little bit for me?
Yeah, it is just a great city, and it's changed a lot since I've been here. It does. It has a lot of some small town feel to it, but then it has some big city feel to it as well. And it's very unique that you have a school the size of Ohio State just down the street. That brings a completely different element to it as well. It's a growing city. It's a young city. There's a lot of young entrepreneurs coming here to do different things. And as I said, just in the 17 years I've been here, I mean, it's really, really grown and some great things happening. And it's exciting. And, I've seen it over the years. So I first noticed it when I was responsible for hosting the 2007 NHL Draft here in Columbus. And, people from all over the world come to the draft, and especially the media, and to a T, they all walk away going, "Oh my God, I had no idea what a great city Columbus is." And then it happened again in the All-Star game. When we had the All-Star game here, people from all over the world come here, and they all leave, and they go, "Oh my God, I had no idea what a great city is." And what I'm really looking forward to is the day where the team has some sustained success and they can go 2 or 3 rounds in the playoffs on a regular basis. They're on national TV, every other night playing whoever, but just getting that exposure for the city, because it's a bit of a hidden gem as far as I'm concerned, but it's just a great place to live. And then going back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, the cost of living and the education and the great place to raise kids. And when you look at all those things, I mean, I've been in the league, whatever it is now, 23, 24 years. All things considered, cost of living, weather, all that kind of stuff, for me, their ownership, there's not many better places than Columbus.
Wow. You heard it here. And again, I mean, that's what I hear as well. So, and then just your career there specifically, you've had multiple roles. So can you walk through your progression a little bit?
Yeah. So when I came here from Switzerland, I originally came in as the director of fan development. Was in that role. I can't remember, so long ago now, but whatever, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. Really tried to help grow the game here and get it kind of going. And we're very fortunate that our ownership also owns a number of different rinks in the area. Our owner had the foresight that, hey, if we're going to bring an NHL team here, we better do whatever we can to allow the game to grow, and put some money into the infrastructure to allow that to happen. So we own a number of double sheet facilities. We have a single sheet facility, which is actually our practice facility attached to the main building. So the infrastructure was there. So in the early days, I was really focused on, kind of helping youth hockey get started in the right direction and growing the game. And then I made the transition. I became the director of marketing. Still overseeing a lot of the fan development stuff. Was in that role again for 4 or 5 years, and then became the vice president. I don't deal as much with the fan development as I used to. We just hired a new director of fan development. Her name's Andy Boyman. She was in Nashville for a number of years. She does a great job. So I've kind of passed on a lot of that to her. But because I've been in it for so long, it's hard for me to remove myself completely. Right. I still sit on the state board for the high school hockey. I still sit on the board of our AAA program, which is our elite travel program here, and so I still dabble in a little bit. But I'm pretty much focused on the marketing side. And as I said earlier too, I think what happens when you're with an organization, as long as I've been, just over time, it's natural that other things get put on your plate because there's a comfort level that you have an understanding of a lot of things, and so I'm getting more and more involved with, as I said, with building operations stuff and things that I never thought I would be spending time on, parking related stuff and things like that. But again, the vast majority of my time is still focused on the main marketing initiatives.
Well, you mentioned earlier, if you're fortunate enough to become a team president, I think is what you said. I mean, those are the types of things that start rolling up, as I'm sure you're aware. What does your team look like? What does the structure of the business look like for you? You mentioned that fan development reports in, but do you also have social media, any other groups as well?
So I actually just moved the fan development out. So as I said, I kind of dabble in it, but we decided to move it under our community group. So it reports up through community now. So on paper, I just have my team of marketing people as well as the creative services people. Now, again, because I've been here for so long, I'm very involved on the ticketing side, and I also work very closely with Mark Gregory, who's our VP on the digital side, and oversees all of our social media and our CRM platform and those types of things as well. So we Mark and I have been here. Both of us have been here since the beginning. So again, Mark and I, we have our hands in a lot of things, and as I said earlier too, it's different for every team. I don't want to give the impression that what we do is what the guy in Chicago does or the guy in Pittsburgh does, and I think it's different, and I think it's different depending on where you're at in your cycle. I find the business very cyclical. Everybody goes through the ups and downs. It's just a question of how long you can sustain the ups and how you minimize the lows, but everybody goes through it, and when you go through those cycles, your focus changes. When you're up and you're doing well, you don't have to focus so much on selling tickets because the tickets sell themselves, and then that frees your time up to focus on other things. If you talk to, I'm trying to think what would be a good example, but take one of the Canadian markets, like maybe the VP of marketing for the Montreal Canadiens. Well, the Montreal Canadiens don't have any issue selling tickets, so the VP of marketing in Montreal is probably focused on a lot more different things than I am, and probably more what I would call fun ancillary type things, because the pressure to sell tickets is not there. But when you're down in your cycle, you have to focus on the sales process and the ticketing, because the vast majority of revenues come from the ticketing side. So the way I often explain it to people, and this is just my opinion, when you're up in your cycle, you market to brand. And when you're down in your cycle, you market to sell.
Right. No, that makes sense.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And being in North Carolina, and Doug would also, I'm sure, be the first to say, it matters what happens on the ice. Now, when the Hurricanes are winning, we've got that ACC college community. That place gets really, really loud. But to your point, like the Canadians, it's the exact opposite. They've got to be winning for that place to fill. So, you talked about Columbus a little bit. What's that like for you? Now, you guys are obviously having a heck of a season this year. But is Columbus like an Oklahoma City, let's say in the NBA, where they just love their team and they pack it every night? Or are those some of the challenges of being in one of the smaller markets?
Well, it's not only a smaller market. It's comparatively speaking, it's still a non-traditional market as well.
Yep.
I mean, it's different, as I talk about the cycle. I mean, it's different when you're down in your cycle if you're the Detroit Red Wings versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. We came in 2000. We really haven't had our up cycle yet. The team is having a great year this year, yes, but we haven't had in my opinion, our up cycle yet. So, when you have your up cycle, you fill your wagon, so to speak, right? Like people jump on the bandwagon. That's how I explain it. Like you fill your wagon. So, your average attend or your average season ticket holder base, like, ours is around 10,000. Well, that's without an up cycle yet. When we have an up cycle, we may get it up to 14,000. Now, when we start to go down again, what you hope is you filled enough people on your wagon that maybe instead of dropping back down to 10, it drops down to 12, so you can sustain the lows a little bit better. But what's amazing to me about Columbus is, even though we haven't had that success yet, and we are in a relatively new market, in the non-traditional market, we definitely need to grow our fan base, but we have a good core group of people that, even though we haven't been that strong, we still maintain a really respectable attendance numbers. Even in the down times, we're averaging 13,000 fans a game. It's amazing to me. It was only 12, 13 years ago that the two worst teams in the NHL, by far, were Pittsburgh and Chicago. Think about that.
No, I know
the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Chicago Blackhawks. Pittsburgh was so bad they were going to move to Kansas City until Mario stepped in and saved them.
Right.
And then Chicago, when they drafted Kane and Taves and that's when they started going. But if you can believe this, in those down times, the Chicago Blackhawks were getting like 5,000 fans a game. That is amazing to me.
Yeah, in the United Center. That's an empty building.
I use that as an example because that's what I'm most proud of. Like, me and I've had this discussion with Doug many times. What I'm most proud of, and when I judge people in my types of role, don't show me what you can do when you're up in your cycle. Show me what you can do when you're down in your cycle. When you're up in your cycle, a lot of things take care of themselves, and a lot of your flaws get hidden. Show me what you can do when you're down, and how do you manage that downtime, and how do you keep it respectable? And that's what's been amazing to me. I mean, I'm proud of the job that we've done, but I'm also very proud of the market, and I've been very surprised by, just how people have stuck with the team. And at the same time, I'm very curious to see when this team does finally start to go, what is it going to really be like? I mean, we're doing pretty good, even though the team hasn't done well. What is going to happen? I really think this is going to be an incredible market. And I really think that when this team starts to go and has some sustained success, that it's going to be really, really fun to watch and see how it goes. Because, for a long time, the only thing in this city was Ohio State. But this, as I said earlier, this town is changing. There's a lot of young people moving to Columbus to start their careers, whether that's starting their own business or coming to work for some of the companies here. And those young people that are coming into Columbus, they don't have any connection to Ohio State. They're not Buckeye fans.
Right.
They're so in general the market is changing, and I think there's great opportunity for us to take advantage of that. And I saw a little bit of it a few years back when we played Pittsburgh in the playoffs. Now, granted, it helps that it's Pittsburgh because the proximity and there's a lot of Penguins fans around here and stuff. But to watch this fan base get fired up, for that playoff series, and to see this building have, well over 19,000 people in it, and people just going crazy, and around the city as well, and the pride. I mean, it becomes a pride thing. It goes back to that, what we were saying earlier about, hey, Columbus is still a smaller town, and, I think it's taken a back seat perhaps to Cleveland and Cincinnati over the years. And I think people here just they're proud of it, and they want to show it off. And when we can have that success and we can be on national TV every night, that's a chance for them to pound their chest a little bit and say, look at us, we're pretty darn good.
Yeah. You mentioned people wanting to come to Columbus. So twofold. One, what's it like to recruit there for your team, and what do you look for in those people? And then two, not that Columbus is the only show in Ohio, but you've got arguably, or maybe inarguably, the best sports administration master's program there in Athens.
Yep.
Do you think that that's a little unfair advantage that you guys have, and that some of those graduates may want to stay in state?
I definitely think it's an advantage. I mean, over the years, currently we have a number of OU grads working for us, and we have a number of OU interns, at any given time, and we work closely. We work closely with the program down there to do different projects. I would say we probably average a project a year, with them. So it's definitely an advantage. And even with the Fisher School of Business at Ohio State, I mean, we do a lot of work with them. So to have a school like that just down the street too is very helpful. We have no problem at all recruiting. I mean, there's not a ton of turnover, especially in my department, but there's always good people, looking and again, going back to some of those things I was mentioning earlier, between just what a great city, cost of living, weather, all that kind of stuff. There's plenty of people that, want to come to Columbus. And it's interesting too. When I first started working for the team and I was a little younger, I still had hockey buddies who I had grown up with and stuff who were still in the NHL. And even on that side of the business, they would all come in, and I'd go down and see them after the game or whatever, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, JD, I had no idea what a great city Columbus was," and so that's really changed over the years. I mean, I just as an example too, I remember when Rick Nash was signing a new contract here a number of years ago, and a lot of speculation, especially out of the Canadian market, was that he was going to go to Toronto. And I said, because he's from that area, and I'm like, there's no way Rick's going to go to Toronto. I mean, and I'm just using round numbers, but if Rick's making $8 million a year, $8 million in Toronto automatically becomes $4 million with taxes.
Yeah.
And then look at the cost of living. $8 million in Columbus is worth a heck of a lot more than it is in Toronto. So I think the players too, as they've come to know, through events like the All-Star game, when you have the All-Star game and you get the elite players coming in and they spend a little bit of time here, again, to a T, every single one of them says, what a great city. The cost of living, the restaurants, the bars, all that kind of stuff is great, and they don't get bothered. Like, Rick was probably the most high-profile player we've ever had here. Rick could walk around the streets or the mall, and no one would really bother him. I mean, same with whoever you want to say now, Sergei Bobrovsky or Nick Foligno or those guys. Like, I mean, yeah, people might say hi or ask him for an autograph once in a while, but in general, it's a very comfortable place for those guys to live.
Yeah. The whole Rick Nash logic. So could you please explain why then Steph Curry wouldn't want to return to the Hornets? Come back home to Charlotte. I mean, come on, Bay Area versus.
That's the NBA is not my forte. I don't know. I can't speak to that one.
I know, man, but no, that makes complete sense with him. And then just in terms of what you look for, obviously, I know you're looking for hardworking people, coming out of college, or whether they're later in their career, maybe looking to be promoted from manager to director. What are you looking for? And then two, who have been your mentors over the years? Obviously, you've had a long run there. You've helped shape the team, but I'm just curious, who have been your mentors and maybe some good advice that you've received or given?
Well, as far as what I look for, I mean, I think as I've gotten older and gone through it a number of times, yes, hardworking for me is a big thing. That's often hard to figure out in an interview process. What their work ethic is like. but I often, when I have these discussions with people, when I get it down to, let's just say, the final three candidates for a position, I don't really care whether you went to Harvard or you went to Ohio State or you went to the community college down the street. And I don't really care if you had a 4.0 or a 2.8. Like, to me, at that point, when you're down to the final few candidates or whatever, they're all qualified. Or they should be, in my opinion. They're all qualified. So then it becomes about finding the right fit. You want to find people who are the right fit for your group. And, for me, it's become more and more, it's about culture. And the words I constantly use with my group, and when I'm addressing, if I'm addressing all of our staff, actually, like, it comes down to two words for me, and that's kindness and respect. Those are two really big words for me. And, this can be a really tough business. It can be a grind, especially when you're losing a lot and, it's not fun. And, you got to keep it even keeled. And, it's not 9 to 5. You got to be flexible. You have to create a culture for people where, they know they have flexibility. And, but again, the thing for me, it sounds so simple, but it's what I believe is, hey, just be kind and respectful, and that takes care of a lot of things. That doesn't mean you can't have differing opinions, and it doesn't mean you can't challenge people, whatever. But when you challenge people, just be kind and respectful in the process.
Right.
And so for me, that's a really big thing, because I'll tell you too, the more, as I've kind of grown through all this and moved up the ranks, so to speak, having the right people in place is critical. And it's not just about doing the job. It's about eliminating all the other crap. Like, when you don't have to deal with drama per se, because such and such person doesn't get along with such and such, or this person's not, the kind of person you want. Like, when you have the right people in place, things just go so much better. And as I said, it's not just about having people who know how to do the job. It's about having good people. And it's not easy to do. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but when you can find the right people that have the good work ethic, that know what they're doing, and most importantly, are good people and can function in this environment, it makes it so much easier and so much more enjoyable, to come to work and to get things done.
Well, I asked you like a 12-part question, so nice work.
Yeah, and the mentor part. You asked me about the mentor too. It's funny. The one person that I constantly go back to is the person that was really a person in the beginning. And his name's Greg Jameson. He was the president of the San Jose Sharks. He was in the NBA before that. He was with the Sharks for a long time. He was involved for a little bit with the group that was trying to buy the Arizona Coyotes. But Greg Jameson, for me, looking back all these years, is the person that I really look up to. I still keep in touch with them. But there's been good people. I mean, I don't want to say they're all mentors, but I've been fortunate to work over the years with a number of different people who have a number of different backgrounds in different sports. And, even those people who you might not get along with and, you don't necessarily consider a mentor, they're very experienced, and, you learn things from them. And, I've had some really good people over the years, kind of to show me the way, so to speak. And you need people too. You need people too to believe in you and to give you opportunities. I was very fortunate at one point that a gentleman who's no longer with us, named Larry Hefner, he oversaw the business side of our organization, and he gave me an opportunity to make that leap from the director of fan development to the director of marketing, and then gave me opportunities, to get more involved, with the organization. And you need that sometimes. You need people to believe in you and to give you opportunities, and that doesn't always happen. And there's probably a lot of good people who who don't get the opportunities just because they don't have somebody that's kind of leading them along and providing them those opportunities.
And since you're having so much success on the ice this year, you're able to, like you said, market to the brand. So what's next for you, your team, and the Blue Jackets?
Well, what's interesting for us is in 17 years, including this season. Well, let's take before that. So up until this season, in the past 16 years, we've only been to the playoffs twice. And both times we went to the playoffs, we really didn't know we were in the playoffs until like the last game of the season. What's amazing this year is that because of the team's success and because of the way they've won, I mean, that 16-game winning streak was huge. We pretty much know now, yes, it's possible we don't, but we pretty much know now that we're going to be in the playoffs. So it allows us to be better prepared. I mean, just little things that the average person wouldn't think about. So, when you don't know you're going to be in the playoffs to the last game of the season, and then the playoffs start 4 days later, you don't have time to like order giveaways and stuff for the fans. Like, you can't turn around 20,000 T-shirts in 4 days. And things like that. So,
right.
The fact that we have time to plan now and to leverage. So, we're going to go out with renewals earlier than we normally would. We're going to leverage the playoffs more than we ever have because we're in a position to do that.
Right.
I started creative, running in the market, last week, basically saying, hey, listen, if you want playoff tickets, the way to guarantee your playoff tickets is to buy some sort of Blue Jackets ticket plan. And that's how you're going to guarantee yourself playoff tickets. So being able to leverage the playoffs, and to focus on those things to get ahead of your planning, for the playoffs, it just makes it so much easier when you have a pretty good sense in January that you're going to be in the playoffs. When you don't know you're in the playoffs until April, it's really hard to plan, properly.
Sure. JD, this has been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. Really cool career, and great to hear the perspective from, like you said, maybe that non-traditional market and a city that I just feel like I'm just hearing more and more about in Columbus. So thank you for coming on, and hopefully our paths cross again soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. If you ever need anything, just let me know.
Thanks for listening to the Front Office Exchange, where you hear about the careers of some of the leading executives in sports business. Visit us at frontofficeexchange.com, on Facebook at Front Office Exchange, and on Twitter at Front Office EXCH to access past episodes, show notes, and much, much more.